Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Learn with Neel, and today I'm here with another video on grammar. We are going to learn about objects today. No, object does not mean a thing here. It is a grammatical entity here. Okay, so let's learn about what an object is and how it is used in a sentence. You have seen in your grammar books, your teachers must have taught you that the standard structure of a sentence in English language is SVO, that is subject, verb, object. But you may also have learned that not every verb takes an object. How do you identify an object? What is an object? We're going to focus on that. I just told you a few seconds ago, an object here is a grammatical entity. What is an entity? An entity is anything that has existence. Everything that exists is an entity. For example, I am a living entity. The mobile that I'm shooting this video with is a non-living entity. Okay? Everything that exists in this cosmos is an entity. An object here is also a grammatical entity. Let's learn about this. The first point that you need to learn about an object is it is a noun or a noun equivalent. It is the equal of a noun. So anything that functions like a noun may also functions like an object depending on the context. An object is a noun or a noun equivalent. What is an equivalent? For example, a noun equivalent is something that functions like a noun. What functions or may be placed instead of a noun? It's a pronoun or a noun phrase or a noun clause. So the equivalent of a noun is a pronoun or a noun phrase or a noun clause. So an object may also be a noun or a pronoun, a noun phrase or a noun clause. The next point is the most important point about an object. An object is a passive entity. It only receives or suffers the action of the doer. This point is the most vital point of an object. It is the most important trait. An object is a passive entity. Why? Because an object does not really do anything. It receives or suffers the action of the doer. The doer does something on the object. The object receives it. For example, if I pluck a flower from a tree, who is the one doing the action? I. I am plucking the flower. What is getting plucked? The flower. The flower is receiving the action. It is being plucked here. Okay? So the flower becomes an object. Let's learn it through examples. The gardener is watering the saplings. Look at this sentence. The gardener is watering the saplings. The verb is watering. The core idea is expressed by this word, watering. This is the verb. Who is the doer? Who is the one watering? The gardener. He is the subject and the doer. And who is receiving the action? The gardener is watering. What is the gardener watering? Question the verb with whom or what. That is the trick. If you question the verb with whom or what and you get an answer, it is usually an object. What is the gardener watering? The gardener is watering the saplings. The saplings is receiving the action. It is being watered. That's why the saplings here is an object. So, let's see if it follows the traits. An object is a noun or a noun equivalent. If you look at this phrase, the saplings, it is clearly a noun. It names something. So the first trait matches. And the next point is it is a passive entity. In this sentence, the saplings are receiving the water. They are not doing anything. The gardener is the one doing the action. The gardener is watering. The saplings are receiving. An object is a receiver or sufferer of an action. That is the most vital point that you need to remember about an object, and it will help you in identifying an object in a sentence. You need to see who or what is receiving the action. The person that does the action is the doer, and the person that receives the action or the thing that receives the action is the object in a sentence. Now we are left with another vital point of an object. It is placed after the verb when the voice is active. How do you understand if a verb is in active voice or in passive voice? You need to look at the sentence and look at the verb and see whether the subject denoted by the verb is doing the action or receiving the action. If the subject denoted by the verb is doing the action, for example, here the verb denotes the subject, the gardener. And is the gardener doing the action? He is, because he is watering. That's why this sentence is in active voice. If the subject denoted by the verb is a doer, then the verb is in active voice. And exactly the reverse, that is, when the subject denoted by the verb receives the action, the voice becomes passive. So in an active voice, the subject is the doer of the action. In a passive voice, the subject is the receiver of the action. Okay? Don't ever get mistaken. The function of the subject changes. Okay? It's not a crisscross. Okay, the subject of the active voice becomes the object of the passive voice. No. Many people will tell you it like this to simplify, but it is not simplification. Okay? It is rather a mistake. You need to learn how a subject functions. In an active voice, the subject does the action. In a passive voice, the subject suffers or receives the action. Okay? Make it very clear in your head. It is placed after the verb when the voice is active. So, if the voice is active, the object is placed after the verb. Look at this. The object is placed after the verb. Okay? And it is placed before the verb when the voice is passive. So when the verb is in passive voice, the object, the receiver of the action becomes the subject. Okay? And the doer takes a backseat. In a passive voice, the one doing the action is not important. Receiver of the action is in the focus. That's why the receiver of the action, that is the object, becomes the subject. Okay? If I change it now, for example, if I make the object of this active voice the subject, what will it become? The saplings are being watered by the gardener. So in this sentence, the doer is no longer in focus. The receiver has become the subject. And the verb that denotes the subject is a receiver of the action. The saplings are not doing anything. They are receiving the action. They are being watered. So this is a sentence in passive voice and the object has become the subject. I hope you understood it clearly. Let me revise it once for you. An object is a noun or a noun equivalent. That is, an object can be a noun or a pronoun or a noun phrase or a noun clause. The next point, the most vital point, is an object is a passive entity. It only receives or suffers the action of the doer. An object does not do an action, it receives an action. The gardener is watering the saplings. The saplings is a noun. It is receiving the action, so the saplings is object. And an object is placed after the verb when the voice is active. For example, this is a sentence in active voice. The verb is active because the subject is the doer and the receiver is the object. Okay? And it is placed before the verb when the voice is passive. When the subject denoted by the verb does not do anything, rather receives the action, the voice becomes passive. The subject denoted by the verb is saplings, and the saplings are receiving the action. They are being watered. Hence, the saplings is an object here, and the voice is passive. Thank you. I hope the concept of object is now clear to you. Follow for more.